Good afternoon. My name is McKenna, and I'll be the moderator for these sessions. It is a series of lightning talks, so it's going to be 3 different sessions followed by questions. First, we'll have creative AI instruction in a sea of familiar territory, presented by Beth Caruso and Christin Lampkowski. Then it will be workshops on AI prompt engineering, presented by Dan Kipnis and Aaron O'Neill. And then we'll finish off with rethinking the SWOT analysis assignment in the AI era, presented by Carrie Vu. As a reminder, we do have a code of conduct. I'm not going to read out the entire thing, but there is a link to it in the chat. And as I said, we will have all 3 presentations, and then questions will be held till the very end. Ideally, we'll have about 15 minutes. So as you come up with questions, please put them in the Q&A down below, and also please put to whom you are addressing your question, since we do have several presenters here. Okay, and without further ado, creative AI instruction in a sea of familiar territory with Beth Caruso and Christin Lampkowski. We'll go ahead and take it away.
Hello. Yes, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Christin Lampkowski, Emerging Technologies Librarian, here with my colleague.
Hi, I'm Beth Caruso. I am Digital Pedagogy and Emerging Technologies Librarian.
And we are presenting Creative AI in a Sea of Familiar Territory. So to get us started, I wanted to let you all know about the section of the library that we work in. It is Area 49. It's our creative, our innovative spaces. And what we are really about here is we're about teaching skills that students are going to use and engage with technology and approaches that they might not do otherwise, but also skills that they're going to be able to take outside of the classes or the particular projects they're working on, move forward with those throughout their academic career and hopefully their continuing careers and personal lives as well. So we have some core learning outcomes that we always incorporate into Area 49 classes, and those include those transferable skills. You might be using a technology you're never going to use again, but hopefully you're going to learn perhaps a way of approaching things that you're going to be able to use going forward. We're also really about positive failure and the idea of experimentation. So we want people to try things. We want people to succeed, but also learn from those failures. We don't see anything as a failure or not being success in our space. We just want people to try things and give it a go. And then we're also really about creativity. We're always trying to find new and unique ways to solve problems, to present information, and we want our students to embody that creativity when we're in a course with them. And we're always incorporating critical thinking as well, which becomes important when you're introducing new tools and new types of information like artificial intelligence. Beth, you're muted.
I was unmuted and then I muted myself. In Area 49, we have lots of different spaces. We have our makerspace, we have our gaming lab, we have easy video studios, we have a visualization lab for data. So we've got a lot of different spaces, and we do get class requests from instructors, as Christin was saying. And so I wanted to show you our approach to facilitating classes that we typically do in Area 49, and then also juxtapose that with our approach to facilitating classes where they request AI use and AI kind of exploration. So in general, our overall approach is to talk with the instructor about course or class goals, then ask what the instructor wants the students to learn. And then after having a conversation about all of that and figuring out what's going to work for that class, then we will develop and then also facilitate that class session. So an example with an intro to writing course, and just note the numbers on the right match the steps of the numbers on the left. We talked about the course goals, and in this course, the students were going to be creating a multi-genre project. So they needed to develop their ideas and create them in 2 to 3 different genres. And those were genres of their choice. So determine how to convey their ideas in different ways for different audiences. The instructor wanted the students to learn in Area 49 how they could use our spaces and services and resources for their project. That's a pretty typical class that we have. And the class session itself, what we developed and then facilitated, was a tour of Area 49 spaces. So we introduced our spaces, our resources, how they can be used for projects, and also how they've been used for projects in the past. And then we shared ideas on using all of these things well, and how to incorporate our space services and resources in with other resources as well. So connecting their ideas with what they could use, connecting skills with how they could approach their ideas, things like that. And then we continued and had a brainstorming session. So all of the students brainstormed ideas in various ways. And then we also shared out those brainstorm ideas on Padlet so that we could actually have further discussion about what they were thinking and kind of go over how those things would actually work out for them. So our other approach, so our AI approach, you can go to the next slide. So our approach for facilitating classes focused on AI is overall, talk with the instructor about course or class goals, ask what the instructor wants the students to learn, develop and facilitate the class. This should look pretty familiar. So the example on the right is actually with the same instructor of the last slide. So she was teaching the writing intro course the previous semester, and then also in the semester that we're talking about here. And so these course and class goals were to be composing using creative methods. So fairly similar to the previous iteration of the course. The instructor wanted the students to learn about Area 49 and how they could use spaces, resources, and particularly AI creatively in the writing process. That creative part was really, really key for this instructor. The class session that we developed and then facilitated was, again, Area 49 tour, Intro to Spaces and Resources. And that was just a little bit shorter than what we usually do. A quick intro to AI, and I do mean very quick. So what is it and how do people use it? Just because not all of our students have actually been working with AI. And then how can they use it well? How can they use AI? How can they use AI well and creatively in the writing process? And these are not necessarily things like brainstorming, which it certainly can help with brainstorming, but these are also things like getting past writing blocks and thinking about how to incorporate their own writing style or research style, things like that, in their writing process. So it was about the process, not about the product. And then, of course, they brainstorm ideas about how AI could help them in the writing process, and then they shared out. So next slide, what you can see from the comparison of these two classes is that they are really similar. It's just a little bit of a difference in approach with using AI versus not using AI. And they were not necessarily required to use it, but the instructor wanted them to think about how they could use it creatively for the writing process. And there were some incredibly great conversations and some great ideas that were generated by both humans and the AI. So, all right, thank you.
And Beth did a great example illustrating how we incorporate AI when there's been a direct request from the professor to focus that as a part of the course that we're teaching. Sometimes, though, we have courses where that is not necessarily the focus, but AI still does apply, and we want to have conversations about that or integrate it as best we can into the class content. And in that case, we're going to try to introduce how AI is integrated into any current tools or approaches that the students are using. That will be things like sometimes Adobe products that have AI included in them now. And an example that I'll show you in just a moment of Canva, which is a very popular creation platform for students who are designing flyers and slideshows and things like that. And then we also discuss the positive and negative aspects, and we focus on those critical thinking skills, really reinforcing with students that we don't want to become dependent on AI just whole cloth. We need to be thinking about it critically when we're using it and also the products that it's outputting. So we do have a marketing class that we work with each semester. It's a capstone course where students are working with a real world client, and they are trying to create a marketing plan for this client to reach the goals that they have for their company or organization. And this past semester, we worked with a co-op food market, and our students were trying to come up with ways for them to connect with their target markets. And the students are often going to end up using Canva as one of their tools to create some of their marketing materials and the information that they want to share with their client. So I used an example in that class where I did a search for the co-op market, and I came up with some images that the Canva AI created for us. And a few of them were kind of okay. They're giving that local market kind of feel, that grocery shopping connection to food. But then on the right-hand side of this example, we have a liquor store, which was not the goal for the client. That's not the type of product that they're selling in their store. So I did another search to illustrate again how sometimes AI just gives you things that don't really connect. And we ended up again with some people shopping, some grocery store images, but also a military soldier holding a rifle of some sort that again was not an image that directly relates to the approach or the client and what they're trying to get across. So I use these as examples to illustrate that we don't want to become dependent on these tools. We need to really evaluate what the tools are creating for us and think about why might they be coming up with the images or the suggestions that they are making in these cases. Our classes have limited time. Anybody who does instruction in academic library knows that there's a lot that we need to cover in the 50 to 90 minutes maybe that we have with a class. And so we really need to find the most important aspects and focus on that, use examples when possible, and integrate these conversations about AI into things like the tools the students are using, or even conversations around copyright and creation in that respect. So the main takeaway is that we're not really doing things differently in the way that we are approaching our instruction. We are adapting to the use of a new tool, which we are constantly doing in libraries. We're not going to let AI dictate specifically how we are teaching. We're going to integrate AI, or we are integrating AI into the approaches that we are already taking and continuing to teach the important learning outcomes and goals that we have for our part of the library and the courses that we are teaching. If you have any questions, here is our contact information. You can always follow up with us after the talk. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, so next we have workshops on AI prompt engineering with Dan Kipnis and Aaron O'Neill. And just as a reminder, please do put your questions down in the Q&A below. Take it away, Dan and Aaron.
Thank you so much, McKenna, and hello to everyone. And thank you for the organizers for inviting us to present. It's been a really tremendous week, and it's been a really wonderful conference. I'm Dan Kipnis. I'm the STEM librarian at Rowan University, and I'm presenting today. My colleague, Erin, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Erin O'Neill. I'm the Assistant Director of Communications for the IT department here at Rowan.
Wonderful. And our talk today is entitled Library Workshop on How to Build Effective Prompts and AI Generators. I'm dropping in the chat a copy of our slides if you'd like to follow along. And we also have a Creative Commons license attached to this presentation, as well as to our actual workshop if you're interested in adopting it at your institution. So we introduced ourselves already. Here we are. You know who we are. Our workshop is actually entitled Prompt Perfect, Elevating Your AI Experience at Rowan University. Rowan's located in the state of New Jersey. We're outside of Philadelphia, about 30 minutes away. We'll discuss the content we cover, challenges we faced, and lessons we've learned in conducting this workshop. So who could attend our workshop? Our workshop was open to the entire community, including the general public. Attendance was not mandatory. This was an optional workshop. We've offered it approximately 8 times since September of 2024. And as you can see here, we have a nice cross-section of different populations among our community that have attended this workshop. In our workshop, the learning objectives that we cover include things like tips for structuring your AI prompts. We spend quite a bit of time discussing what cannot and what should not be included in AI prompts. And we also focus in on making sure that our users are familiar with the products that we have licensed at our institution, including Microsoft Copilot, Google's Gemini, and Adobe's Firefly. Erin, would you like to take over?
So we did want to cover just a few general warnings for the people that were attending the workshop. And from me coming from the IT perspective, it was really important to get across the message that you should not be entering just like sensitive data into these tools, especially if they're unlicensed tools. But we also talked about acknowledging the use of AI content and how that differs depending on how and where and when you're using it, as well as always reviewing the content and looking for biases and inaccuracies. You can go to the next slide. We talked about ways that you can think of these AI tools. A lot of people like me kind of like went in there when they first came out and said, you know, write a 500-word essay, and it did it in 5 minutes. And you were like, wow, at least me as a communicator was like, my job's gone. But there's many other ways that you can use these tools. So we wanted them to kind of think of it as an assistant, and how can you use it to help you do your job or to help you study, and not let it do those things for you. We got into some of the do's and don'ts of prompting. As many of you know, probably use these tools. It really depends on the tool you're using and what the outcome of the prompt is. But these were just kind of some general do's and don'ts for the attendees. And then during one of our first sessions, we had a faculty member ask us about AI content detectors. So our faculty center and the Division of Academic Affairs had put out guidance on this. So we covered the guidance, which is don't use AI content detectors because of false positives and other reasons, and then link to the faculty center page for more guidance for professors.
So we also go ahead and introduce the frameworks. There are a ton of these available out on the web, and we like focusing in on the parts framework. These are all frameworks can be adapted for different tasks. And even though many people, I think, feel like they're comfortable using these generators or feel like they're using them to their best abilities, we find that it helps to give them kind of a roadmap, and introducing this parts framework is really helpful, where we introduce the concept of identifying who you are, what is your stated objective, what is the specific audience you're working with, discussing issues of style and tone, as well as kind of desired formats for the outputs. And we give examples. So one that I think will probably echo with many of you today is probably the one on the right, where someone would enter something maybe in a prompt that says something like, I need help with a search. And what I always like to tell people is that the generators aren't mind readers, right? They need context and specificity to kind of understand truly what is it that you want to do. So we improve the prompts for them. We give them sample prompts so that they can see the different ways that a prompt can be improved. So in this case, it could be improved by saying, I'm an undergraduate student. I need 3 peer-reviewed journal articles from the year 2020 onward that discuss the growth of e-bikes and their impact on traffic patterns in urban settings in the United States. So from taking it something very simplistic to something a little more sophisticated. Erin, you want to talk about the tools?
So we also wanted to cover the various tools that we have available. Like the previous presenters mentioned, a lot of our tools are built into systems like Adobe Creative Cloud, but we also have Copilot licensed for everyone at the university. We also have Google's Gemini. Right now, currently, that's only available to employees, not students, as well as Adobe's Firefly, which is available to employees as well as certain students and certain arts courses. And then I pointed to some other resources that the IT department has put together. We're currently managing the generative AI website page that covers a lot of the information that we go through during this workshop. And then also pointing to our artificial intelligence policy, which again just kind of hammers home the please don't put sensitive data in these tools.
So all of this takes us about 30 minutes. Probably what we haven't shared is we conduct our workshops virtually because we have 3 different campuses. So we try to be as accessible as possible by offering them virtually so folks can attend. And we end our workshop with this 15-minute hands-on exercise. And the exercise revolves around using Microsoft Copilot and working with a given prompt that we supply. We work on a Google Doc, so everyone is working from a shared document. And what we do is we give them the prompt of implications of AI on higher education. Very simple. And we ask them, how can they improve this prompt? So then what we ask them to do is to copy and paste their improved prompt into the Google Doc. We ask them to copy and paste then what is the output from Microsoft Copilot, that initial response. And then we ask them also to pick out the best references provided by Copilot so that we can kind of do a comparison and see how the users interpret this prompt and what they decide to do with it. Here are some examples of some prompts that were given by our attendees. I'm just going to go ahead and read the second one, which I thought was a fairly good improvement of the simple prompt that we provided. I'm a college student with a basic understanding of AI, and am looking to learn more about how it works. Please provide me a list of articles, news articles, peer-reviewed journal articles that discuss how AI will affect higher education, cover a variety of consequences, including but not limited to research, grading, student performance, mentorship, and then they also included, please cite your sources. So you can see how this gives a little bit more context to the very simple prompt that we started with. You want to talk a little bit about the challenges, Erin?
So some of the challenges that we faced were just the speed that these tools are changing. We opened one, I think we had a workshop in September. We went through Copilot. We had the one in October. Copilot had like completely changed its interface and the way that you log in. So that was one of our challenges, is just kind of keeping up with the pace of these changes and then incorporating it into the workshop. Additionally, we had some issues with attendees. They were just copying and pasting the very simple prompt that we were giving. So requiring more detailed instructions or providing more detailed instructions for the prompt exercise helped us get over that challenge as well.
So what are some of the lessons we've learned kind of in doing this hands-on exercise as a group? First of all, we found it inspiring how attendees seem to be learning from others as to how they could improve the simple prompt. I think seeing how others approach the same problem in coming in from a different perspective or vantage point, I think is really helpful. As well, I think doing this exercise live so that attendees spend time in looking at the references that are provided and doing kind of a close analysis of what the generator is recommending. So in some cases, some of the citations were, I think, older than others. And then you get to have a discussion about kind of the credibility of a source and where it's coming from. So this was really beneficial. And we found that Copilot would give different references, obviously based on how the input was structured, how the prompt was structured for our users. And then lastly here, I think the idea, everyone kind of working together collaboratively, it provides a spirit, kind of a community of learners, which is very inspiring. And I feel like, you know, Erin and I are learning about this stuff on an everyday basis, but I think we're continually surprised at our users and the wealth of knowledge that they themselves bring in learning kind of how these generators are evolving, how they're changing. And what I love the most is I love hearing how they are adopting and what they are doing with these generators on a day-to-day basis. So the feedback, I think, has been fairly positive. Here, we're just sharing some of the comments that users have shared based on the workshops that we've done. And I think we can wrap up by saying there's truly a thirst for this content on our campus. Not everyone is a power user. There are a lot of novices. There are people, you know, who have heard about these and that there's an eagerness to kind of learn and to start adopting and using them. So I think our workshops are kind of filling that niche, and Aaron and I are already thinking about new workshops for the upcoming year that we're going to want to be developing. Here's our contact information. Thank you again for listening to us. And like I said, our presentation today, as well as our actual workshop slides, they have a Creative Commons license. So feel free to adopt, borrow, remix. We just ask that you give us credit. And if you want to reach out, please do. And here are some references and resources as well. Thank you again.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dan and Aaron. And last but certainly not least, we have Rethinking the SWOT Analysis Assignment in the AI Era, presented by Carrie Wu. Carrie, if you just click the slideshow at the top there. Circular button. Okay. And then also you're muted.
The video and the audio first. Video. Okay, finally. Sorry. So let me turn on the sharing. Okay, can you see my sharing?
Yes.
Video? Okay, all right. So let's get started. Thank you for the introduction, and I'm thrilled to be here today. So my topic is Rethinking the SWOT Analysis Assignment in the AI Era. So I'm sure most of you already know what SWOT analysis is. It's basically a strategic planning framework or technique to analyze a company, an industry, an organization, or even a person by looking at the internal and external factors. The SWOT assignment is in many courses at Portland State. For example, a 300 level required course, a 400 level marketing course, capstone, and maybe many more. Oftentimes, it's part of a much larger writing assignment. So in a traditional one-shot library instruction, I tend to focus on the retrieval of prepackaged SWOT reports in databases like Business Source Premier, Business Insights, InvestText, and so on. I try to incorporate some information literacy concepts here and there. For example, I recommended to the students that they should use the sources as references, as inspiration, not the be-all and end-all. That the authors are humans too, and they may have their blind spots, limitations, and so on. So that's why it's all the more important to consult multiple sources and come up with your own conclusion. But usually because of the limited time in a one-shot session, I mentioned those briefly. Started about 2 years ago, I noticed some difference. For example, a professor who is a big library champion who has been using my secondary research tutorial for years and years in her class asked a question. Now that AI use is prevalent, do you think that is even relevant or useful anymore? I think if she's asking that question, that might be a question on many people's minds, including other teaching faculty or campus administrators. Another professor said research paper may cease to exist in the next 5 years. To me personally, it may not take 5 years, and to others, maybe that day is already here because we have already seen articles about everybody's cheating their way through college with AI, employers preferring AI skills over experience. There's an explosion of AI tools on the internet for every task imaginable. And I've even seen the accelerated learning and improvement in the AI system. For example, a few months ago, I was doing research on a obscure basketball club, and there wasn't much information. So I used ChatGPT and Gemini, and I got nonsense basically about Nike, which has nothing to do with the club. But a few days ago, when I try again, I got really nice write-ups about the club. So we can see that the AI systems are continuously improving at an exponential speed. And there's also a tsunami of AI adoption in every industry, from healthcare to education and so on. So what do we do as librarians when the students are using AI to maybe write their papers, and while we are trying to introduce information literacy skills? This is my attempt to align the two, but I've only done a little bit of it in my actual instruction because they have not changed their assignments. So hopefully I will do more of it in the future. So for example, instead of focusing on the mechanics of retrieving these reports, we can get students to ask AI to for a list of the resources it consulted. So not just the citations to the actual articles, but the categories of sources. For example, company reports, industry association, trade publications, news articles, and so on. Then we can talk about the creation of these of that information, and so also the pros and cons of them. We can talk about the timeliness, the inherent biases, and so on. Students can even do a deep research using ChatGPT or Gemini or other tools because sometimes they may see resources they don't otherwise see because they are buried in the results on page 5 of a Google search. And in that inherently comes to the recognition of information as a commodity. So sometimes the AI output might be too general or too superficial. If students need to dig deeper, they have access to proprietary databases, paywall articles, and so on. That brings up a copyright concern because sometimes maybe students will feel tempted to upload a jargony analyst report to some AI tools and to get the highlights and themes and so on without knowing that it might be in violation of copyright. So we need to talk about that. And also we can get students to understand that they can be contributors of information, not just the consumers. So every time they see a wrong answer, a hallucinated answer, they can argue with the AI, say, no, this is not the right answer, this is the right answer, and so on. And sometimes they are helping AI to refine the output. So it's very similar to people editing Wikipedia entries. Probably the best use case for AI for students would be the brainstorming part. So we can talk about breaking down the topic, suggesting keywords, even using the keywords to search in Google versus searching in library databases, even using AI to create an outline. This is especially useful for students who are only starting to write their first paper and they need some extra help in keywords, suggestions, and outline. So if students are already asking questions, why not help them ask better questions? So that's where prompt engineering comes in. We can teach them different techniques of asking better questions, from flip question to audience persona, etc., so that they can ask better questions. When we talk about prompt engineering, they can also ask AI to generate better questions. So you can flip it and ask AI to see, is there a better way to ask this question so that we can get better answers? You can use the AI to provide pros and cons of the same issue, similar to opposing viewpoints, CQ researcher, so that you can get students out of the confirmation bias or information bubble or echo chamber, etc. Students can also use AI to critique the first draft to correct some obvious grammatical mistakes and so on. Also review the final draft. They can even upload the rubrics in their final draft to compare, to see whether they have hit all the points, and also to get some other suggestions. So ultimately, it's about looking at research as an iterative process, that they are asking more and more questions, better questions, and come back and get better drafts. So we are already talking about citations, so why not introduce some citation tools? For example, Research Rabbit or Litmaps to look at the citation linkage or the citation map. So this is less to do with SWOT because most of the time they don't use a whole lot of academic articles, but down the road they might be helpful. And also we can help students understand the inherent biases in the AI training materials that it tends to represent the dominant current viewpoints. So that's why it's all the more important to help them understand to evaluate the AI output, not just for the factuality, but also through the lens of the bias. And students can be encouraged to use multiple AI tools to compare and contrast the results and maybe even combine the results. So ultimately, it comes down to critical thinking. Just like Dr. Jules White in his Coursera course said, generative AI hallucination is not a bug, but a feature. So because they're generative, they are that's how they were designed. So in this sense, they are not replacing traditional research skills. Actually, it's all the more important to help students learn how to do independent research to verify the AI claims so that they can think outside of the LLM AI world, because we don't want a whole generation of students who are depending on the machine to do their thinking and do their cognitive function. So despite a lot of concerns about hallucination, privacy, environmental impact, and so on, universities and colleges are racing ahead to embrace AI, possibly under the pressure of the employers. But just like the famous radiologist said at one time many years ago, radiologists who use AI will replace radiologists who don't. It's not AI replacing radiologists. We can swap out the name radiologist and swap in any kind of knowledge worker, whether it's accountant, librarian, teacher, and so on. So the School of Business at PSU are at the forefront of this movement. They are integrating and implementing an AI micro-credentialing program. So basically, they're dividing up a AI course into 3 modules and embed each module into 3 require undergraduate courses with the idea that by the time they graduate, they will have earned a badge. At this point, it's still optional, but I'm sure a lot of students are interested in the badge. So this also generated quite some interest on campus. For example, Office of Academic Innovation is writing an article about it, and other schools or departments are thinking about doing something very similar. Even for my 300 level course that I teach the most, they are talking about doing a redesign of their assignments to incorporate AI sometime in August. I've been invited to meet with the instructors to brainstorm ideas, which is very exciting. So that's the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Carrie. You can go ahead and stop sharing. Cool. So I have a question for all of you, since all of you talked in one way or another about the importance of specificity when it comes to AI prompt engineering. You also all talked about hallucinations. Are there some tips that you have for creating that specificity in the AI prompts to avoid hallucinations in the answers? Whoever wants to start can go first.
I'll jump in and say that I think that is very challenging, and I don't know that there is a really good solution that I have found or I have seen in place thus far. But I do think that that specificity is what is most important, and the refining. So when I'm talking about the prompt engineering side of things, my usual approach is to say, don't go with the first thing. Like it is that iterative process that Carrie was speaking about. You're probably not going to get exactly what you're looking for the first time around. Continue to refine that as you go forward.
I'll echo what was just said, and something that I've been thinking about is actually prompting the generator to do quality control. So as it's giving you references, asking and following it up with, are these references real? Or can you point me to the publisher site of this reference, and kind of putting it on the spot that way?
Students can also ask for citations so that they can go there to check the citations themselves. And it's always important to check all the citations because you never know which one is hallucinated.
I will because I always like links. I always want to see where something comes from. So I ask for the link to the thing. And sometimes that works. And then sometimes it's 404 not found, or, something. And I go and search for it myself. And it turns out it was completely hallucinated along with the URL. And so I think it's, you know, kind of what others have been saying too, that it is the refinement of saying like, no, I wanted this. And then it says, oh, so sorry, you're right. And then continuing to teach it in that particular chat instance.
Yeah, I agree with Beth. When I said citations, I meant links because they have the citations and the links there.
Awesome. The other thing that has been talked about multiple times in this conference is that some of the students that we've all encountered at one point or another seem to be afraid to try the different types of prompts. They're afraid to make that mistake in class. There's a hesitancy to do so. Are there any brainstorming activities you all have to encourage the students to try different prompts or try different strategies for critical thinking about them?
They're not going to break the AI, so just try.
The analogy that I use when I talk about it is how there's never a gold standard for search strategies. And the way we as librarians work in creating search strategies, especially for something like a systematic review, and how it tends to be easy for me to say. We're repeating ourselves with our searches, right? We're thinking of new keywords. We're doing a lot of like preliminary readings and learning new vocabulary and learning kind of the terms that should be used. And so what I like to say is it's no different, right? Where the way you use a prompt generator is similar to the way you would use, say, a database, where it's rare that you type in your search strategy the first time and you get what you want, and you're editing it as you go.
I also find that giving examples helps, because if they, you know, it's kind of the same thing of presenting to them, right? So I'm teaching in class, you know, if we're talking about presentations, it's like, hey, look at me trip over my words every 5 seconds. I do it too. I recover. It's okay. And so showing some of those prompts that have just completely and utterly failed for me, right? Most likely not because of anything that I did, but showing them that, giving them those examples, and then as they're starting to test those things out, say, let's share, you know, some of these. You don't have to necessarily share, but if you've got something that just went really, really wrong, that is also an opportunity for other people to learn. Or if it went really wrong and it's funny, share it with us, because we would like to laugh along with you and have similar experiences to what you had done. So I think just really setting that standard that it is okay to try these things, and like we've all done it too.
Let somebody momentarily raise their hand and then put it down, but I didn't see the name before that happened. So if that was you, please raise your hand again, because I'm not good at multitasking. They must have done it on accident. So those are the main questions we have. I'm sure everybody will come up with more questions as they process all this amazing information, because we did just throw a ton at them. Thank you for all of our presenters today. And please do continue the conversations in the chats, and the recording of this video will be up as soon as we can get it. So thank you, everybody, and have a really good rest of your day.